All rise. The Honorable Douglas Bechtel presiding, Courtroom 3, Douglas Elbert, Mott County Court.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to Division 3. At this time, the court is going to call case 21 CB 303720 entitled Dakota Weirs v. Lush Fertilizers. Let me first start with the plaintiff. Is the plaintiff ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Your Honor, sorry. One of our witnesses actually got disconnected. Is there any way the person could let Rachel Patel back in?
Done. She's in.
Thank you.
We'll give her a minute to let her get connected and synchronized. Just want to clarify that if anybody is video recording these proceedings, they need permission from both teams. If you don't have permission, then you shouldn't be recording. Also know that the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs or more likely screenshots of the competition during this round, and that team participation in this tournament grants automatic permission and the use of these photos by the Colorado Bar Association. I think our courtroom monitor is already kind of taking care of this, but if there's anyone in the courtroom that is not connected with either team, they should leave the courtroom now. I'll remind the teams that there are no recesses allowed, with the exception of those granted for a health emergency, and especially not between the end of witness examination and the beginning of closing arguments. Of course, if we have technical difficulties, we can certainly accommodate those. I'm going to ask each of the scoring panelists if they have any reason to believe that they would be biased in judging either team. I'm going to start first with Ms. Salzman.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Next, Judge Miller.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. No conflicts. Beg your pardon.
Perfect. Thank you. And Ms. Barnes.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. We'll remind the teams and coaches that any disputes arising out of this competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. I'll remind each of the individual participants that your compliance with time requirements will be considered in scoring your performances. At this time, I'm going to ask each side to introduce the participating teams, both attorneys and witnesses, starting first with the prosecution.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Edward Thompson. I will be performing the direct examination of Dakota Weirs and the cross-examination of Devin Williams. Your Honor, do I have permission for my co-counsel to introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Ryan Pack, and I will be performing the direct examination of Skylar Weirs and the cross-examination of Carson Durst.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Rachel Shaw. I will be performing the direct examination on Dr. Casey Rogers and a cross-examination on Blake Duncourt. Do I have permission for my witnesses to introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Sophia Mayen, and I will be playing Dakota Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Rachel Patel, and I'll be playing the role of Carson Durst.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Michael Schuler, and I will be playing the role of Casey Rogers.
And defense, please. Ms. Lyons, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Kara Lyons, and I'm going to be doing the direct examination for Dr. Devin Williams and the cross-examination for Carson Durst, as well as the closing statement. Permission to have my co-counsel introduce themselves.
Please.
Opposing counsel. My name is Laura Polito, and I will be leading the cross for Dakota Weirs and the direct for Miss Skylar Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Addison Yakubovich. I will be crossing Casey Rogers and directing Blake Duncourt. Do we have permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor. And I will be portraying Blake Doncourt.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the opposing counsel and the jury. My name is Amelia Orton, and I will be portraying Dr. Devin Williams.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Lexi Williamson, and I will be Skylar Weirs.
Great, welcome everybody. So now we're going to swear everybody in, starting first of all with team members. Team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? See a lot of head nodding, great. Witnesses, if you can raise your right hands, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Again, seeing lots of nods, thank you. Gallery members, including teachers and attorney coaches, family members and friends, do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? And finally, scoring panelists, if you can raise your right hands, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
I do.
Perfect, thank you. So starting with the plaintiff, do you have any preliminary matters?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Defense, any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor. We request that any stipulated facts be entered in as evidence.
Plaintiff, any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Granted.
We also ask that as evidence is entered in, that they're constructively given to the jury and witnesses and constructively shown to opposing counsel.
I want to ensure that all of our scoring panelists have access to the exhibits.
Yes, Your Honor.
Jim?
Yes, yes, we do. I do.
Well, perfect. It sounds like all the jurors have their trial notebooks, so yes, constructive service is fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. That is all.
Perfect. Is the plaintiff prepared to deliver an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Imagine you are a hardworking student in a large part of your community. You have applied to a number of schools in hopes of receiving that one fateful letter. After months of waiting, you open the mail and see that you've received a full ride scholarship to Juilliard for your piano playing abilities. You have finally met the hopes for your grandfather. And as you begin getting ready to become the person you've been meant to be, you fall extremely ill to a cancerous disease known as non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Now you have to turn down your full ride scholarship to a prestigious academy and fail to meet the goals you set for your grandfather. This is the story of Dakota Weirs, our plaintiff. Your Honor, members of the jury, my name is Edward Thompson, and with my fellow lawyers, Rachel Shaw and Ryan Pack, we will be representing Dakota Weirs in this case. Today, we intend to prove that Lush fertilizer caused a tragic downfall of a young girl's dreams. The facts of this case are simple. Lush fertilizer failed to provide enough warning about the newly used compound Drufo within their fertilizers. Lush fertilizer should have provided enough warning within their labels, knowing real human beings are also the ones applying this fertilizer. While it's clear that Drufo caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin lymphoma, the defendants will bring a convincing argument. They will attempt to describe that Lush fertilizer was not responsible for Dakota's illness, as well as explaining that Drufo does not contain any carcinogens. While our case argument is very strong, it cannot be perfect. The defendant's attorneys will also attempt to poke holes into our witnesses' statements by explaining that Dakota Weirs should have known directly to wear her safety gear. Yet, with not a single warning labeled on the packaging, how is a young girl expected to understand the risks of not doing so? They will then attempt to attack Carson Durst's story by discussing their lawsuit against him joining a different fertilizer company. But who wouldn't move companies after you hear about their willingness to put money above safety? Finally, they will attempt to invalidate or argue that Dr. Casey Rogers' studies are inclusive. But that's a weak argument, as he's done multiple studies that confirm his findings, and his findings, although inconclusive, are still valid to this case. Today, ladies and gentlemen of the court, you will also hear from our 3 witnesses that will directly prove that Drufo caused this disease. First, you will hear from our plaintiff, Dakota Weirs. Dakota Weirs was the direct effect of the lack of warning labels on their fertilizer with Drufo. She will tell her heart-wrenching story about the emotional and physical trauma she has experienced due to Lush Fertilizer's negligence, and will then go deeper into how she discovered it was Lush Fertilizer who is at fault for her sickness. After that point, it will be clear that Dakota Weirs has experienced an insurmountable amount of pain and suffering due to their negligence. Next, you will hear from Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush Fertilizer. He will give an account about the lack of transparent studies that Lush Fertilizer conducted on Drufo's connection to carcinogens in humans. He will also go in depth on the history he has within the company, building himself as a reliable whistleblower and explaining to the court the story of how they had the option to make Drufo safer, but chose to still put financial motives over human lives. At this point, it will be clear that Lush Fertilizer understood the main risks of Drufo and still chose to release it to the market. Finally, you will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in agriculture and entomology. He has conducted multiple studies on Drufo and its effects on humans. The evidence within the studies link Drufo directly to having carcinogens. These published studies show a direct link to using Drufo in developing cancer. And through the expert review of Dakota's medical records, he came to the conclusion that there's a high medical probability that Dakota's lymphoma was caused by Drufo. After this final point, it's clear to see that Drufo is unarguably cancerous and directly caused Dakota's condition. The plaintiff is requesting for compensation for the emotional and physical damages Dakota experienced, including the loss of her Juilliard scholarship, the loss of any chance to professionally play piano, the daily pain of living with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and the fear of developing worsening diseases with a compromised immune system. Overall, due to Lush Fertilizer's inhumane negligence, she will never be able to resume the quality of life she originally had. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, for your time. I am confident that after you hear from this trial, Lush's negligence will be clear and you will vote in favor of giving Dakota Weirs monetary compensation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the defense prepared to deliver an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please.
When you wake up on a nice summer morning here in beautiful Colorado, you step outside and smell the crisp morning air. You feel the sun's warmth rising on your skin and smell the beautiful, fresh green grass. Lush Fertilizer wants every morning to be like that. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Addison Yakubovich, and I'm here with my co-counsel, Kara Lyons and Laura Polito. We represent Lush Fertilizer today. You have heard from the plaintiff's attorneys tell you what they believe this case is about. Now, we are going to give you the full story. This case is about a company who followed the rules and a person who did not. You will hear the facts that Lush did not cause the plaintiff cancer. You will hear that the plaintiff has to prove that they have to prove their case during this trial, and the plaintiff cannot meet her burden. Lush does its best to make every lawn a beautiful oasis. They do this by focusing on safety. You'll hear today that safety is not only part of the manufacturing process, but also involves how the fertilizers are used. This includes how it is used by the plaintiff. You will hear how important safety is for Lush. While Lush makes safety important, the plaintiff admits to disregarding safety procedures. Lush has to protect and contain chemicals such as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, iron, and Drufo, which are in your everyday life. Lush also lists safety recommendations on every one of their products. The plaintiff is aware of these recommendations and admits to not following them. Now the focus is on the plaintiff's case is Drufo. Drufo is simply a chemical designed to keep nitrates out of streams and lakes and is a bonding agent for the defense's chemicals. The chemical is designed to help and protect the planet and not create harm. The plaintiff must prove that Lush knew or should have known that Drufo caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a claim the science does not support. The plaintiff also must prove Lush hid or willingly ignored potential dangers. Again, the plaintiff will not be able to prove these claims. Members of the jury, Lush sympathizes with the plaintiff and feels for her, but Lush also wants her condition to improve. You will hear from evidence today that her condition is improving. However, the plaintiff has to be responsible for failing to wear protective clothing and not wearing a respirator while using the fertilizer for several years. The negligence of a plaintiff should not be a punishment for a company who provided all safety measures needed. Members of the jury, this case is simple. This case is about following the rules. The evidence provided from the witnesses from both sides, you will see that the plaintiff is trying to paint Lush in a negative light for monetary gain. You will hear from the Lush's witnesses that Lush used all the information to determine how their product should be used with the right for the right of their customers, and how they looked at all the information to determine the necessary requirements. Today, you will hear from Skylar Weirs, who is the plaintiff's own twin. He cannot support the plaintiff in this lawsuit because of extensive research that he did on his own as an investigative journalist, and he found that Lush fertilizer is safe. You will also hear from Dr. Devin Williams, who has been with Lush for over a decade and is the leader of the toxicology research program. Dr. Devin Williams will explain how biological systems respond to environmental interventions and inorganic compounds and in agriculture differently. This is his research. He was able to test and determine the effects of the chemical agents and determine the levels are safe for humans. That includes Durufo. Durufo is an industry-leading product that made the environmentally aware company. It is cost-effective and delivers what it promises. The evidence will show that the Lush product does its best and does not put profits ahead of safety. Lush follows the laws and regulations, but Lush cannot force people to follow these safety recommendations and should not be responsible for when people do not follow these recommendations. Ladies and gentlemen, this plaintiff has the burden of proving her case today. It's her obligation to hold the burden and not let sympathy for her condition sway your decision on how you view this evidence. The evidence will show that the plaintiff cannot prove Durufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the evidence will show followed all the requirements and procedures and regulations, something the plaintiff did not do. At the end of this trial, after you are presented all the evidence and hear from all the witnesses from both sides, we are confident that you will reach the verdict based on the evidence that Lush did not cause the plaintiff's illness. Please follow the evidence in favor of defense. Thank you.
Thank you. Plaintiff, please call your first witness.
Your Honor, I would like to bring Dakota Weirs to the stand.
Ms. Weirs, I'll remind you that you are under oath.
Could you please state your name and spell out your last name for the record?
My name is Dakota Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
Could you tell me a little bit about yourself?
I'm a hardworking member of my community, and I enjoy doing community service, mainly through volunteering at the local homeless shelter.
What other activities did you partake in other than volunteering?
I've always been dedicated to my education, especially as a member of National Honor Society. And when I was not diligently working in school, I played the piano.
When did you begin playing the piano?
Well, I really began playing the piano as soon as I could reach the keys. But my love for piano started when I was 7, after my grandfather died.
How would you describe the way piano has impacted your life?
The piano is my greatest passion and joy in life. As I grew up, I began to develop a talent for playing and was recently awarded a full-ride scholarship to Juilliard, which is everything I've ever dreamed of.
How would you describe your piano playing skills at the moment?
At the moment, I am unable to play piano because of the cancerous disease known as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Why has this disease caused you to stop playing piano?
Well, I've been unable to play mainly due to my inability to sit for long periods of time on the hard piano bench. But swollen lymph nodes, frequent chills, chest pains, constant fatigue, and even a severe shortness of breath also don't contribute to my ability to play.
Has the disease affected any other parts of your life?
The disease has forced me to turn down my scholarship to Juilliard because I'm unable to play, and I've suffered serious bouts of depression in the past. And my twin Skylar and I's relationship has declined severely.
Can you tell me a little bit about your past relationship with Skylar?
Skylar and I have never been the closest of twins, but we're still siblings. We participated in most activities together other than my landscaping job.
Has Skylar developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
No, Skylar has not developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Only I am the unfortunate one that has developed this disease.
When did you begin feeling sick?
I began feeling sick right before I was set to leave for Juilliard, after several years working in the landscaping industry.
How did you discover Lush fertilizer was the reason for your sickness?
I was sitting around watching TV, one of the only things I can do these days, when on the news they began to discuss documents that had been leaked about Lush fertilizer lying about their safety protocols.
What did the news report discuss about those protocols?
The news report discussed documents.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Plaintiff response.
Your Honor, these are public records released by the news.
That doesn't mean it's not hearsay. What?
Isn't an exception 803 6 or 803 7 to 8 through 10 where it's a public record made by official and regular manner?
I don't think a news report qualifies as a public record. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Thank you.
Can I rephrase my question, Your Honor?
Absolutely.
With what did you do after watching TV and figuring out that Lush Fertilizer had lied about their safety protocols?
Well, they had released these documents, but after I figured that out, I immediately called my boss from Haven Landscaping and asked if they had any old packaging from the Lush fertilizer we had used while working there.
Your Honor, may I show the witness Exhibit 1?
Yes.
Let the record reflect that I'm showing the witness a copy of Exhibit 1. I now show you, or let the record reflect that I'm showing the witness a copy of Exhibit 1.
The record shall also reflect.
I now show you what has been marked for identification as Exhibit number 1. Would you identify it, please?
Yes, this is the label of Lush fertilizer, and I know this because my boss sent me a photo of it.
Your Honor, I ask to admit Exhibit 1 as the label of Lush Fertilizer.
Defense, any objection?
They've laid enough foundation.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part of your statement.
Your Honor, I do not believe they've laid enough foundation.
So the witness testified that this is a photograph of the label of the fertilizer that she used. So the court, over the objection of the defense, will admit Exhibit 1.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you please read the sentence under hazards in Exhibit 1?
Keep out of reach of children. Caution causes eye irritation. Avoid contact with eyes of clothing.
Are there any other warnings in caution?
No, there are no other warnings or risks, or it doesn't say there are any risks. While there are user safety recommendations, there were no specific warnings of using this product.
With those lack of warnings, how's your future been affected?
I was forced to turn down my scholarship to Juilliard, my dream, and now the doctor has no idea whether or not I will get better. As well, my financial situation is costly due to my extensive medical bills.
How do you afford these medical bills?
Because I'm unable to do anything at the moment, my father has to turn all of his financial focus on me instead of my twin.
Has this case affected familial relationships?
Well, because our father only pays for my bills, Skylar has become slightly resentful because our father would not help her pay her gambling debts.
Does Skylar have a current job?
Skylar is a very talented author, but I'm afraid due to my father choosing not to pay for her gambling debts, she might be writing for the wrong reasons.
Thank you, Your Honor. That's all.
Thank you. Defense Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Nice to meet you. I'm going to be asking you a couple of questions today, so please feel free to answer with a yes or no answer. You worked at Haven Landscaping for about 4 years, is that correct?
That is correct.
And during this period of time, you worked with a variety of fertilizers?
I did.
And fertilizers tend to be a danger when ingested.
They are.
And Lush fertilizer also doubles as a pesticide.
It does. However, it is also used in the landscaping industry, and when I used it, I had no idea that there were any risks associated.
But let's go back to Exhibit 1 real quick. May you please read the user safety recommendations?
As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning and maintaining personal protective equipment. I did see this, but however, these are recommendations. We did not take these as warnings.
Well, would you consider safety recommendations to also be met? You would say that, would you agree that recommendations are also warnings against potential cause effects?
I took them as how
Your Honor, objection, Your Honor, a vague question.
Response?
Your Honor, I can clarify, although I'm not entirely sure how it's vague. If the plaintiff could please clarify by how it's vague.
I think you were kind of composing the question as you went along, so it kind of was a little choppy. If you can just ask it directly, and we'll see if the plaintiff has an objection.
Of course, Your Honor. So, but you would say that these would you say that these user safety recommendations are safety recommendations, right?
They're labeled recommendations, so I did take them as a recommendation instead of a warning.
So because of potential dangers in fertilizers or pesticides, companies do have to take precautions against any potential dangers. Is that correct?
Yes.
And at Haven Landscaping, you were required to take safety precautions.
We were, however, no one else was doing it.
But you were required to take safety precautions?
Yes.
Safety precautions of certain types of clothes?
Yes.
Safety precautions of face masks?
Yes, however, we did not think that this was necessary because they are recommendations.
Once again, you were required by Haven Landscaping to take these precautions?
Yes.
And you would agree that it's important to follow safety precautions to protect yourself, is that correct?
Yes, however, if the precautions are not warranted, it is not okay to use them. Not necessary to use them.
That's why you didn't follow all safety precautions?
Yes.
And you were told repeatedly by your boss to follow these safety precautions?
Yes, however, like I said, they were not warranted.
But you were told by your boss?
Yes.
And you did state in your witness testimony that looking back, you would likely have done things differently.
Yes, now that I know that there are risks associated with flush fertilizer, I would have done things differently.
Risks that they did warn against in the user safety recommendations for you to take precautions?
They did not say that there were any risks associated. They just said that these were recommendations. They did not say that this could cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
You love being outside, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you believe that, and because of this, your boss did have to ask you to take—
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay. The attorney asked her to give her opinion on what she believes.
Your
Sorry,
Honor,
yeah.
Are you withdrawing the objection?
Yeah, withdrawing the objection. I apologize.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So because of this, your boss did ask you to take safety precautions.
Yes.
So
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. She's already asked if the boss has requested her to wear safety recommendations.
sorry, Your Honor, I did want to clarify just to make sure, because since we were interrupted before.
Objection's overruled.
So would you say it was unreasonable to protect yourself from the chemicals that you used?
Yes, but it is only reasonable when there are risks associated.
And as you did say earlier, just to clarify that you said this earlier, you did specify that fertilizers and pesticides do tend to be dangerous.
Yes.
Moving on, I want to ask, do you still have your scholarship to Juilliard?
It was deferred for 2 years.
So you're still going to have it?
Yes, but that depends on my condition. We don't know if I will get better or not.
Right, but as you also stated in your witness statement, your doctor is very hopeful that you will be getting better.
Yes, but there is no absolute specific on whether or not I will get better. We don't actually know. My doctor is hopeful.
But you still have the chance to go to Juilliard?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Does the plaintiff have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
It is true that your boss requested you to use the safety equipment, correct?
Yes.
But it is also true that your boss did not enforce the use of that safety equipment, correct?
That is correct.
That is all my questions, Your Honor.
Based on that redirect, does defense have any recross?
No, Your Honor, not at this time.
Thank you. This witness is excused. If the plaintiff can call your second witness, please.
Your Honor, the plaintiff would like to call up Carson Durst to the stand.
Ms. Durst, I'll remind you that you are under oath, or Mr. Durst, I'm sorry. I'll remind you that you are under oath.
Could you state your name and spell out your last name for the record?
My name is Carson Durst. That's D-U-R-S-T.
And can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am the lead product developer for Terra's Green.
And what do you do as a lead product developer?
Well, as head of the research and development team, I oversee Terra's Greenery's developments of its products.
And can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with the Doncourts?
I knew the Doncourt since I was a little kid. I consider them as a family I've never had because Charles Doncourt was my best friend and we were inseparable.
And did you ever spend time with the Doncourt family?
I was often invited to dinners with them on Sunday nights. I even got invited to their lake house for summer trips and played soccer with Charles.
All right, and can you explain a little bit about your career history?
I went to Arizona State University with Charles and graduated with a bachelor's in chemical engineering.
And what happened after that?
Right out of college, I was employed as an intern on the research and development team in June 2003 for Lush.
And how did you hear about the Lush opening?
When I was home one senior break for during the summer, Charles told me that Lush was hiring interns.
And why did you take the job?
Positions like that are rare, especially for people in my position, so I didn't want to pass up on the opportunity that I had.
And how did you progress through the company?
I got promoted after only 3 months because of my high level performance in engineering.
And what do you do for the company?
Well, my biggest assignment was working to develop Drufo that Lush was developing in order to keep its fertilizer products preserved and intact.
Where was Drufo during the time of your employment?
In 2001, the chemical formula for Drufo was developed over a couple of years. However, when I was employed in 2003, Lush was in the process of testing the safety of the bonding agent.
And how did you go about your research with Drufo?
I had to research one of the chemical compounds that comprise Drufo. The first study was done in-house by the research and development team.
And have you come across any findings?
I came across a study in England that explored the compound may have carcinogenic effects in rats.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm showing the witness Exhibit 3. Your Honor, permission to show the opposing counsel Exhibit 3. And
Does opposing counsel have a copy of the Exhibit 3?
Yes, Your Honor.
And now, Mr. Durst, I now show you what has been marked as exhibit number 3. Would you identify it, please?
Yes, this is the excerpt from the study that was done in England.
And what do you recognize Exhibit 3 to be?
It was a study that explored the carcinogenic effects in rats.
And how do you recognize it?
It's the excerpt from the study that was done in England.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of what you remember the exhibit to be?
Yeah.
Your Honor, I now ask to admit Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Defense position?
Objection hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, this is a study that has been admitted as an exhibit because he personally has seen this as a public record that on a study. This is a public record study that he has researched and said in his witness testimony about the England study.
I believe that this is being admitted for the truth of the matter asserted. It is a statement by a Paula Ninoslava. So I am finding that it is hearsay and the admission is denied.
Okay, let's talk about the credibility of the reports. As a part of the research and development team, does anyone oversee your work?
Yes, Jerry Langley, the product manager, typically reviews our reports on a regular basis, compiling our findings into a single report and then sending it up to senior management.
Were there any studies done at the time to explore whether Drufo was carcinogenic?
Yes, Lush was doing another study that questioned if Drufo was carcinogenic in humans. We were given directions regarding the parameters of the study through email.
Permission to show the opposing counsel Exhibit 4, or if they have it in front of them.
Does the defense have Exhibit 4?
Yes, Your Honor.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm showing the witness Exhibit 4. I am now, Mr. Durst, I now show you what has been marked as Exhibit 4. Would you identify it, please?
Yes, I identified it as the email that Jerry Langley sent down to the research and development team.
And what do you recognize Exhibit 4 to be?
The email from Jerry Langley explaining the parameters of the study.
And how do you recognize Exhibit 4?
It's the verification of the study outcomes of the possible carcinogenicity of Drufo on humans.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of what you remember the exhibit to be?
Yes.
Your Honor, I now ask to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Defense response?
No objection, Your Honor.
Without objection, Exhibit 4 is admitted into evidence.
Can you tell me a little bit about what the email says?
Yes, it basically gave the parameters of the study. The email wasn't completely clear regarding the agenda, but during the weekly staff meetings, they clarified on it more.
And what data did you have to do to document in the study?
There wasn't a specific template, but the instructions were given in a way that would force a conclusion to support Lush's hypotheses.
And what did the results indicate?
One scientist expressed a concern that Drufo may have a carcinogen, but it also might link to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Were there any suggestions to make Drufo safer?
Well, a month or so later, after the report had hit my desk, the study said that Drufo could be baked to make it non-carcinogenic.
And what stood out to you about the study?
From what I was able to do in the research, I found it to be incredibly misleading. Some of the data was left out of the final report specifically about non-Hodgkin lymphoma and how it wasn't addressed anywhere in the report.
And what do you mean by this?
The data in the document was the exact data needed to go forward with using Drufo in a way to seem like the company would have to go above and beyond what was necessary to fit safety standards.
And what is the significance of Drufo to Lush?
For Lush, Drufo would set it apart from its competitors. I had no doubt that Lush Fertilizer knew about the risk of Drufo's link with cancer, specifically non-Hodgkin lymphoma and non-baked form.
And has anything at Lush changed once the study was released?
Things became stressful. I was constantly attacked with claims about my performance, even though my annual performance reviews only suddenly started to reflect those sentiments.
And what happened as a result of this?
The executive team at Lush confronted me and had me sign a performance improvement plan.
And what is this plan?
It basically just says that I was on probationary status with the company.
And did you talk to Blake Doncourt about this?
Yeah, but it wasn't much of a help. He had a temper at the time because he was going through a divorce.
And what happened after that?
Objection and speculation.
Response?
Your Honor, this is not speculation because he was personally there when going to Blake Doncourt as he had a temper manner in his witness testimony. So he's not speculating on anything.
Objection overruled.
And what happened after you talked to Blake Doncourt, just because we were interrupted?
A few months later, I decided that I no longer wanted to be a part of Lush Fertilizer, and I went to Blake to talk about it.
And what did you talk to him about?
I told Blake about how I thought Jerry wasn't being fair to me and was trying to push me out of the company. However, because Jerry had been loyal to Blake and a good product manager, I clearly didn't get anywhere by saying that.
What did you do after that?
I went back to my lab and started searching for a new job.
And you decided on Terrace Greenery?
Yes.
Let's talk more about that. Why did you decide to go to Terrace Greenery?
Terrace Greenery presented a huge opportunity for me, what with it being Lush's greatest competitor, and it also had a huge job opening for me.
And during what time did you make the switch?
In December of 2006. However, Lush found out that I was hired by Terrace Greenery and then a legal battle ensued.
And why did Lush begin a legal battle?
Lush wanted to get a court to enjoin me from working with Terrace Greenery due to the risk of me giving away trade secrets.
Is it normal to sign a confidentiality agreement when working in industries like this?
I didn't remember signing a confidentiality agreement at the time because it had been 3 years, but apparently I had signed a confidentiality agreement which stated that I could not disclose Lush trade secrets at the beginning of my employment with Lush.
And what do you do now at Terrace Greenery?
In my first few years, I mainly worked on a new product that outperforms Lush Fertilizer's equivalent on the market. So far, projections show that Terrace Greenery might overtake Lush as the best-selling fertilizer on the market.
That is all, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Durst. I'm just going to ask you a few questions. Yes or no would suffice. So starting off with your relationship with Mr. Doncourt, when you left Lush, you knowingly went to Doncourt's biggest competitor, Terrace Greenery, Inc. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
And this was because you didn't like how it went down between you and Mr. Doncourt.
Yes.
When starting out at Lush, you signed the agreement, which included a non-compete agreement as well as a non-disclosure agreement. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I had signed that 3 years before before I left the company, so I didn't remember at the time, but I had signed an agreement.
Would you agree that this is a very important document?
It was an important document, but no one had told me about it when I left the company.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation. She is asking my witness to speculate whether this agreement was an important document to him.
Response?
Your Honor, a non-disclosure agreement would prevent Mr. Durst from working at Terrace Greenery, and because he signed this document and knew it at the time, like I feel like it would be an important document. And
so
Mr. Durst
the objection was to speculation. The witness can certainly testify whether or not this document was important to him, so the objection is overruled.
So again, Mr. Durst, would you agree that this is an important document?
Yes, but at the time I didn't remember that I had signed it, and no one had reminded me that I had signed it, so I didn't think much of it at the time.
But that is a yes.
Yes.
And you simply forgot about it.
Yes, it had been 3 years since I last saw that document.
Okay, now moving on to the record you received on your desk. You were unsuccessful in finding any studies which explored whether the chemical compound had any adverse effects in humans, correct?
Correct. At the time, one scientist had found something, but Mr. Monroe wanted to keep it in the walls.
But you were unsuccessful in finding any studies, isn't that correct?
Yes.
And in the report that went to senior management, you could only speculate the problems and summarize the analysis outlined, isn't that correct?
Correct. It got sent to senior management, so it was above my pay grade. But like I said, in one of the weekly meetings, the scientists had brought up a concern that it could link to non-Hodgkin lymphoma, but it was kept within the company and overlooked.
So you had no concrete proof of your speculations or any evidence whatsoever to back it up?
Except for what that one scientist had said in the meeting. No.
So you have no concrete evidence, like proof right here, that you have to back up the speculations that you made in your witness statement?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered. My witness already gave an answer to this question.
Response?
Your Honor, I don't believe he gave a straight answer, so I'm just clarifying to make sure.
Objection overruled. If you like, you can ask to have the question re-asked.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, because you asked the question.
So you have no concrete proof of your speculations or any evidence, tangible evidence to support the speculations you made?
No.
You also received a copy of the study report on your desk about the analysis on Drufo, correct?
Correct.
And nowhere on that report was non-Hodgkin lymphoma specifically addressed?
It was not, but like I said, Mr. Monroe wanted to keep it in the walls of the company when that one scientist brought up that it could have a link to it.
But non-Hodgkin lymphoma was nowhere written on that document, isn't that correct?
Correct. But like I said,
No further questions, Your Honor.
Does the plaintiff have any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you. This witness is excused. Plaintiff, please call your third witness.
Your Honor, permission to call Casey Rogers to the stand.
Granted.
Good afternoon, doctor. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Casey Rogers, Rogers.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm currently employed as a professor at the University of California at Berkeley in the Horticulture and Entomology Department.
And what level of education have you received?
I have a PhD from the University of California at Berkeley in the field of agriculture and horticulture. Prior to this, I received a bachelor's degree from the Colorado State University in the fields of agriculture and chemistry.
And before working as a professor, what was your occupation?
I worked as a research analyst for a large chemical company until I earned my PhD.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm showing a witness a copy of Exhibit 6. I'll now show you what has been marked for identification as Exhibit 6. What do you recognize this exhibit to be?
This is a copy of my curriculum vitae.
Objection to deny.
Pardon?
I'm sorry, what was the basis?
Off them already showing that they have laid their foundation of the character, but they have not, but now they're entering their business degree, which is not needed and it's hearsay.
So at this point, all the counsel has done is shown the doctor an exhibit, hasn't moved it for admission. So I'm going to overrule the objection at this point.
Your Honor, let the record reflect I'm now showing a witness a copy of Exhibit 7. I now show you what has been marked for identification as Exhibit 7. What do you recognize this exhibit to be?
This is a copy of my published works in various academic journals.
Your Honor, now I move to admit Exhibit 6 and 7 into evidence.
So first, with respect to Exhibit 6, what's the defense position?
No objection, Your Honor.
Without objection, Exhibit 6 is admitted into evidence. With respect to Exhibit 7, what is the defense position as to Exhibit 7?
On Exhibit 7, objection to lack of evidence. Lack of foundation. Sorry, Your Honor.
Response?
Your Honor, these exhibits are important into moving the plaintiff as an expert in the field of agriculture and entomology, which is relevant to our case.
So the objection was lack of foundation. However, I am going to find that Dr. Rogers, I'm sorry, did state that this is a list of his publications. I believe a proper foundation has been laid, so the court will admit Exhibit 7 over the objection of the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff now moves to establish Dr. Rogers as an expert in the field of agriculture and entomology.
Defense position on the request?
No objections.
No objection from the defense. The court will recognize Dr. Rogers as an expert in the field of agricultural and entomology, and he will be entitled to present opinions in that area.
Now, Doctor, what is your connection to Dakota Wears?
I reviewed Ms. Weir's medical records as part of my involvement in this case.
And what did you see in Wears' medical records?
Dakota Wears was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And what is non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is a cancer that affects lymphocytes or white blood cells. These cells are important to helping stave off infection in the body.
And what occurs in a patient who has non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
The cancer will start anywhere in the body that contains lymph tissue and will then start to spread throughout the rest of the body. Some cancers are indolent, they will spread slowly. Some are aggressive, they will spread quickly. Patients with non-Hodgkin lymphoma are more susceptible to disease due to their compromised immune system.
Objection, Your Honor. They do not have the scope to be talking about how non-Hodgkin lymphoma works.
So Dr. Rogers has been qualified as an expert in the area of agriculture and entomology. So can I get a response from the plaintiff on how this is within the scope of Dr. Rogers' expertise?
Your Honor, Rule 702, Dr. Rogers has extensive experience and with the chemicals and their side effects as part of his work in agriculture and entomology, including dropho and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a common side effect of pesticides, which falls under the agriculture and entomology department.
The court will find that this is within Dr. Rogers' area of expertise and overrule the objection and allow the testimony.
Sorry, you can finish your question or your answer, Dr. Rogers.
In addition to increased susceptibility to disease, patients with non-Hodgkin lymphoma will experience an array of symptoms, including fevers, weight loss, anemia, and itching all throughout the body.
And what is the survival rate of this lymphoma?
The 5-year survival rate for a patient diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma is 72%, which means that over 1 of 4 patients die within 5 years of diagnosis.
And how is non-Hodgkin lymphoma contracted?
Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is not a genetic disease. It is usually caused by exposure to environmental conditions, such as a pesticide.
And can a patient with non-Hodgkin lymphoma be cured?
A patient with non-Hodgkin lymphoma cannot be cured. It can be controlled, but that opens up the door for further infections down the line.
And what is your knowledge of the chemical dropho?
I've been researching dropho for a while now, as it first caught my eye when Lush released it.
And have you published any studies on dropho and its effects?
Yes, I published several studies on dropho, including dropho toxicity and carcinogenicity, a review of the scientific basis of the European Union assessment in 2017 in the journal Biotechnology Information, and more recently, the evidence of human exposure to dropho, a review in the Environmentalist in 2019.
And how did you first come to be interested in dropho?
It first caught my eye when Lush released it because I felt they'd rushed it to the market without performing sufficient studies on its safety. So I decided to perform my own study.
And what did this study attempt to determine?
The study attempted to determine adverse health conditions for those who had increased exposure to dropho.
Could you please describe your study?
There were 3 groups in my study. One group was never exposed to dropho. Another group used dropho only occasionally, while a third group was exposed to dropho on a regular basis. I then attempted to monitor them over a period of time for adverse health effects.
And what were the results of your study?
Those who had exposure to dropho had increased rates of cancer. Those with regular exposure to dropho were 10 times more likely than the control group to develop cancer and 5 times more likely than those who only used dropho occasionally.
In which group would you say Dakota falls under in your study?
Dakota Wears would fall under the group of one who used dropho regularly. She used it for 4 years.
And was your study conclusive?
Unfortunately, my study was not conclusive because I did not have the time to assess the efficacy of the protective gear which many of the workers did not use. This still applies to Weir's case. She did not use the protective gear either.
And what were recommendations you made to mitigate exposure to DROFA?
As part of my study, I made a series of recommendations to mitigate exposure to DRUFO. Because DRUFO is either breathed in or it makes contact with the skin, I recommended wearing a medical grade face mask to cover the nose and mouth, as well as long sleeves and long pants. However, this was the best option short of discontinuing the use of DRUFO altogether.
And how did you come to these conclusions?
I applied reliable principles and methods to the facts given to me.
And based on your conclusions and your knowledge of Dakota Wears's medical records, what would you say is the cause of Wears's lymphoma?
There's a high degree of medical probability that Dakota Wears developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma as a result of prolonged exposure to DRUFO.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Rogers. Can you please refresh the jury's minds on why you are called as an expert witness today?
While I have extensive research on DRUFO, I've published numerous articles and I performed several studies regarding the chemical.
Do you have any medical degrees?
I do not.
So you being an expert in this case has zero medical basis in this case.
I do not have a medical degree. However, I have a PhD in horticulture and agriculture.
But you do not have a medical degree and have no medical basis in this case.
I do not have a medical degree.
You conducted a study linking DRUFO to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, your study was never published in a scientific journal. Is that correct?
It was unfortunately not.
And can you please explain your non-peer reviewed study?
Unfortunately, it was not peer reviewed.
I understand that. Can you please explain your study?
So the study attempted to determine rates of adverse health effects as a result of those exposed to DRUFO. So some were exposed to DRUFO regularly, some never, some only occasionally.
And did you test each of your groups for previous health conditions?
I did not.
And is it possible to assume that previous health conditions could make them more susceptible to getting ill?
It is possible.
And in the groups exposed to DRUFO, you were found higher of incidences of cancer were the ones that were exposed to many other chemicals. Is that correct?
Yes.
And just to clarify, many of those individuals were farm laborers.
Yes.
So plethora of other chemicals and pesticides were already in their system, making them more susceptible to cancer. Is that correct?
Yes, they would have been exposed to more chemicals than just DRUFO.
And without testing them for a previous illness, isn't it possible that something could have also affected them to have cancer?
It is possible.
And did you check the background to make sure they do not have any ways of having cancer?
I did not.
Now, can you, I'm going to read you part of your statement. Is that okay with opposing counsel, jury members, and Your Honor?
It's fine.
Okay. 1 second, please. Okay, so is it during your study, you stated that you had not been able to, hold 1 second, Your Honor, something is going on with my system. Here you go, Your Honor. So you stated, and I quote, to reduce risks of absorption in the skin, anyone who worked with DRUFO should wear long sleeves and long pants to avoid skin coming into contact with chemicals. Is that correct?
That was the best option, short of discontinuing the use of the product altogether.
So you wrote that, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you also wrote, most importantly, working with aerolized versions of the product or might breathe in chemicals should wear a medical grade protective mask that covers your nose and mouth, similar to an N95. Isn't that correct?
Yes, if they were using the chemical.
And isn't that correct that that is also the warning on the warning label that has already been marked as Exhibit 1?
Yes, I believe it is.
So during your study, did you use lush fertilizer safety precautions that they provided?
I did not.
So just for clarification, you did not use the product safety recommendations when testing if it was dangerous?
No, I did not. That
So you
was,
other safety recommendations, it could have helped them in the end and made your studies less susceptible to cancer. Is that correct?
it could have helped. However, my study found that the best option was to not use Drupal altogether.
But isn't it correct that it could have been shown that it was less dangerous if you used Lush fertilizer's safety precautions?
It could have helped to mitigate the risk, yes.
And you also said on the very next line that the results of your study were inconclusive. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, they were inconclusive.
So you have no yes or no concrete answer that your study was accurate in any way.
I do not have a concrete answer. However, the study was only inconclusive because the workers were not given the protective gear.
But yes, your study was not conclusive because it was never proven true because of no peer-reviewed study, and you even admitted it was never conclusive.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I'm going to sustain the objection on a compound question. I think there were actually 3 or 4 questions in that question. So if you could break those up into individual questions, please.
Your study was never, as you've already stated, your study, I just want for clarification, your study was never concrete and was never proven correct.
Compound question, again, Your Honor.
I think the council's question is 2 different ways of saying the same thing. I think it's a single question. Dr. Rogers, if you could go ahead and answer the question, you can also ask to have it restated if you need.
The study was ultimately inconclusive, yes.
So is that why you never published it in a scientific medical journal?
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Response?
This is something that he should know since this was his study and he would be the one to have submitted it to a peer-reviewed journal. I'm only asking.
She's asking for his personal motivation in not publishing it. I don't believe that it's speculation. Dr. Rogers, if you could answer the question, please.
Yes, this is why. However, I have published several other articles regarding the use of Drupal.
But it was never published, meaning it was never a concrete answer.
The study was not published.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Plaintiff redirect.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. This witness is excused. Does the plaintiff have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense, please call your first witness. Defense?
I'm so sorry, Your Honor. We're having some technical difficulties. If you could just give us a minute, please.
No worries.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, my computer disconnected from our Wi-Fi. I would like to call Blake Doncourt. Good morning, Ms. Doncourt. Can you please introduce yourself to the court, spelling your last name for the record?
Hello, good morning. My name is Blake Doncourt, D-O-N-C-O-U-R-T-T.
And Ms. Doncourt, what do you do for a living?
I am Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer.
And what do you do as Chief Executive Officer?
I'm responsible for managing the overall operations of Lush Fertilizer. This includes the delegation and directing of agendas, driving profitability, managing the company's organization, structure, and communication with the board.
How long have you been Chief Executive Officer?
I have been CEO of Lush Fertilizer since 2000.
And what steps have you taken to build this company?
I worked day and night to build up the company. It took years of work and significant expenditure of capital.
Do you believe that Lush is a successful company?
Yes, I do. I do believe Lush is a successful company. Due to our rapid growth, we have been able to work with charities, reduce our nitrogen footprint, and and create little environmental impact.
What opportunities has Lush led to?
It led to our company committing to donate 10% of all annual profits to environmental organizations. We have been awarded the prestigious Steel Business Sustainability Award, and I have been nominated and won the United Nations Champion of the Earth Award.
And have you ever been brought up on not doing things right for the environment?
We do not bake Drufo. However, Drufo has not been shown to contain any carcinogenic chemicals.
And just for clarification, Lush has never been brought up for any charges of doing anything bad for the environment.
No, we haven't.
Have you ever been brought to court for doing anything in having any inappropriate behavior at Lush?
We have not.
And what do you attribute for the reason that people have not felt a reason to bring you guys to court?
We put safety recommendations on all of our labels.
I would like everyone to please look at what has already been put into evidence as Exhibit 1. What is this that you now have in front of you?
This is the label on our flagship product, Lush Fertilizer.
And what do you have personal kept records of this?
Yes, I do. It is part of my job as CEO to keep records of labels.
Now, earlier you talked about the different precautions that are now on this piece of evidence. There is different precautions set on the label. Can you explain what?
The label recommends the use of an N95 face covering or use of a respirator, along with covering any exposed skin to reduce coming in contact with the product, on top of washing your hands before and after using the product.
And those are a lot of safety recommendations. How do you establish those?
We follow national guidelines set forward by the government. We also, if any substance within our product were to be found to be carcinogenic, we would have to label that immediately.
And you've stated earlier that Lush has not been brought up on any wrongdoings, but today you are here in court defending Lush. Have there been any studies that have spoken up specifically against Lush Fertilizer?
There was a study. Casey Rogers did conduct a study which tied Drufo to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. However, his study was never published in a scientific peer-reviewed journal.
And why does that matter?
It was never reviewed by other experts in the field.
Speculation, Your Honor.
Response?
I would like the prosecution to explain how that is speculation.
She's speculating that it wasn't peer reviewed.
That was in his statement and was
Why?
seen that, and it's easy to have told that it wasn't because that is the information he was given.
The court's going to overrule the objection. We know that it was not peer reviewed.
May I continue?
Please.
As CEO of Lush Fertilizer, why does it not matter to you that Lush Fertilizer was never peer reviewed?
No other professionals in the field reviewed the study to make sure that it was accurate. Then our product has no cause for concern to be carcinogenic.
And can you please, just for the court's understanding, what does carcinogenic mean?
I'm sorry, Miss Yakubovich, can you move a little closer to the microphone? I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Yeah. Can you please explain what carcinogenic means?
It is a substance that has been known to cause cancer in people who are exposed to it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Improper expert witness.
I'm sorry, what was the objection?
Improper expert opinion.
Response? I'm sorry, Ms. Kubovich, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I do not know. It cannot, this is not, what was the objection again?
That she's testifying as an expert.
Your Honor, this is not an expert opinion. This is a simple definition of a word of something that her company is being trialed for right now.
I'm going to find that would be expert testimony qualifying, telling us what non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is would be expert testimony. So I'll sustain the objection.
Your Honor, I was not asking what non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was. I was just asking what carcinogenic substances mean.
If you can lay a foundation why Ms. Doncourt would know what carcinogenic substances mean, then you can ask that question. Otherwise, there's an improper foundation.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Does the plaintiff have any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Have you ever had any serious doubts about whether Drofo was safe?
We have conducted multiple in-house studies on the safety of Drofo, and it has never been concluded to be unsafe.
And you wouldn't have released Drofo to the market if you had any suspicion it contained carcinogens, correct?
That is in fact correct. We would not have released it.
And you also said that you never saw any valid scientific evidence showing a reasonable probability that Drofo is carcinogenic, correct?
We have not.
And would you include your own scientist's work as valid scientific evidence?
Yes, because our ethics department is qualified to conduct studies on the safety of products pushed to the market.
So in the analysis meeting in December 2003, when a Lush scientist found that it may contain a carcinogen and may be linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma, you still didn't feel that there was any reasonable probability it was carcinogenic.
Fertilizers and pesticides in general do have a risk of being carcinogenic. However, we cannot completely eliminate fertilizers from the planet. We did our best to ensure Lush fertilizers' safety.
So you are admitting right now that there was a concern that it was carcinogenic?
Yes.
Asked and answered.
Well, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I just had to ask for clarification since she answered no when I asked the first time.
I'm going to overrule the objection. The answer stands.
And the report formed by your scientists in December 2003 recommending baking to eliminate the possibility of Drofo being considered carcinogenic, you also did not find to be valid enough to increase Lush fertilizer safety, correct?
That is correct. We chose to not bake Drofo.
And one of your scientists also quoted a study from England that found evidence that Drofo is carcinogenic in rats in his reports, correct?
That is correct.
And did you not find that study valid or reasonable proof that Drofo may have cancerous effects either?
We did not.
So all of these scientific results didn't make you at least a little concerned if there was a chance Drofo is carcinogenic in humans, correct?
That is correct. If you did follow our safety recommendations in which we put on our label, you would have no cause for concern to be exposed to it.
But if you did have a concern that it was carcinogenic, as you admitted earlier, you said that you would not have released it to markets, yet you did, correct?
That is correct.
Is it also true that you knew baking the fertilizer would alleviate any risk that the fertilizer was carcinogenic?
That is correct.
Is it also true that you were going through personal financial issues, including a pricey divorce at this time?
Yes, the divorce was incredibly difficult to manage on top of the company.
And you needed the money that you saved by not baking the Drofo to pay back your, quote, vulture capitalists, correct?
That is correct.
So there were major monetary gains to you and Lush from not baking the Drofo, correct?
That is correct.
And is Drofo a patented chemical?
It is.
So Lush fertilizer would be the only fertilizer to have the Drofo chemical in it, correct?
That is correct.
So if the non-Hodgkin lymphoma was caused by Drofo, as we've asserted, couldn't Lush fertilizer be the only way she was exposed?
That is correct.
You also had hopes of winning the United Nations Champions of the Earth Award this year, right?
That is correct.
And this lawsuit puts the chances of winning that in jeopardy, correct?
That is correct. However, I do believe that our product has been proven to be safe.
So this lawsuit not only affects your business, but also your personal goals and reputation in the environmental community, correct?
That is correct.
So you personally have a lot at risk due to this lawsuit?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense, redirect.
No redirects, Your Honor.
This witness is excused. Thank you. If the defense can call their second witness.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to please introduce Skylar Weirs to the court.
Thank you.
Hello, Ms. Weirs. Will you please introduce yourself, spelling your last name for the court?
My name is Skylar Weirs, Weirs.
And what do you do for a living, Skylar?
I'm an investigative journalist, a freelance investigative journalist,
And where do you work?
a rationalist.
And what does the rationalist write about?
It's a magazine that focuses on science education and the resists to spread pseudoscience and encourages all readers to ask questions.
And why did you start working there?
Well, when I was younger, I was super obsessed with aliens and conspiracy theories. It wasn't until I really got older that I understood why real science was important and to stand for what's right.
And why? And so why do you think you made that change?
Gosh, when I found out about the rationalists, I read a lot of their articles, and questioning science, I realized how important it was to research and decide for myself whether science, using science and facts to determine whether something was true or not.
So what type of articles do you write about now?
Lots of articles about modern agritech, stuff like GMOs, commercial agriculture, and stigma surrounding agritech.
And how long have you been researching modern agritech?
For about a year now, I have been deep researching, and I have a lot of knowledge about the history and statistics surrounding the topic, probably a lot longer than anybody else.
And where do you get your information and statistics from?
My statistics come from the United States Department of Agriculture and the Association of State Department of Agriculture.
And have you written any articles about modern agriculture?
Yes, I've been trying to get people to understand the importance of the agricultural sector without sensationalizing or sometimes these untrue stories regarding lush fertilizer.
Your Honor, at this time, we author Ms. Weirs as an expert witness in the history of modern agritech under Rule 702 based on their specialized research, knowledge, and experience.
I'm sorry, that was the history of modern agrotech?
Yes, Your Honor.
Prosecution position?
Yes, could I have a voir dire to challenge expertise?
Absolutely, please.
Ms. Weirs, you said you were an investigative journalist, correct?
Correct.
And just to make sure you don't have any degrees to provide credibility, yes?
I do not.
And you said that you doubt anyone has the overall perspective on modern agritech, that you do, correct?
I truly do believe that. I have been deep researching where some people can research for 3 to 4 years and they might not get the same information that I could get in a year.
And the publishing company you work for is devoted to promoting scientific skepticism, correct?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? It was a little bit fast.
And the publishing company you work for is devoted to promoting scientific skepticism, correct?
Correct. We are all about the real science.
Largely following scientific topics of commercial agriculture and GMOs, correct?
Correct.
While also following mass hysteria and conspiracies of lush fertilizer?
Correct.
Even topics like UFOs and like flat earth theory, correct?
A lot when I was younger, I believed in that kind of stuff, but I don't write about it anymore.
You said that you specifically said that your base of knowledge involves general knowledge, correct?
General knowledge that I have researched.
Right, and meaning you do not specialize in scientific fields, correct?
Correct.
And you said that you spent almost a year researching Drufo, correct?
Correct. Deep research, and I have done my research and I know what I'm talking about.
However, within that research, a span of 1 year, you were only able to provide 2 credible sources of research, yes?
Yep.
And you said you have tracked down publications from various agritech companies, yes?
Correct.
But failed to mention the credibility or the validity of these publications, correct?
All credibility that I have read has been credible and good information.
Providing no specific evidence to support your perspective on modern agritech besides the two specific sources you listed, correct?
Yes, the true sources.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to oppose the admission of Skylar Weirs as an expert witness in the field of history of agritech, as there is a clear absence of qualifications such as a degree and a very limited experience besides her experiences in science within her childhood, specifically in the research of agritech and pesticides, from the lack of credible sources and publications to support her evidence, and the failure to mention her training and education within the role as an investigative journalist.
Defense response?
Your Honor, I believe that our witness has in fact shown where her credibility, stating that she researched from statistics from governmental agencies such as the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. So unless my opposing counsel is saying that these sources are not credible, then I'm unsure on what they're saying.
So the credibility of her sources is prime material for cross-examination. I'm going to find that an expert can be qualified by education, experience, or knowledge. The witness has testified that she does have knowledge that would assist the trier of facts, so the court will accept Skylar Weirs as an expert in the history of modern agri-tech and can render opinions in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, what do you know about the misinformation spread in modern agricultural companies?
Well, lots of companies in the agriculture business spread misinformation in PR campaigns to try to ruin the reputation of other companies.
And how do they go about that?
They pay millions of dollars, so then people will not use their competitors' products, and regardless of how much good it can actually do.
And do you know what DRUFO is?
DRUFO is a fertilizer, chemical fertilizer that also doubles as an effective pesticide, and it's very game-changing in the world of fertilizers.
Why do you say that?
DRUFO barely needs to be compared to other fertilizers, while other fertilizers may need to be applied 5 or 6 times a year to make sure that they are effectively used. DRUFO only needs to get applied once or twice a year, and unlike other pesticides, it doesn't need to use toxic chemicals like arsenic.
And why is that significant?
Well, for one, it's better for the environment. Using less products, stopping a lot of effects of nitrogen runoff, in huge dead zones like lakes and oceans, because it doesn't need to be applied so much. Using less nitrogen would be better, and it's also very terrible for the human body.
Could you clarify what you said about nitrogen's effect on people?
Right, so nitrogen is obviously terrible for people. It's linked to things like cancer, potential birth defects, and things like diabetes. DRUFO means you have to use nitrogen, a killer, but much less of it. DRUFO is necessary to protect the people.
So what actions do companies take to protect people?
Well, modern companies like Lush Fertilizer have warning labels to promote wearing protective gear. And on top of that, companies make use of chemicals and take care of their employees. This is why this happened to Dakota, because she did not follow precautions.
Could you go into that a little bit?
Well, the place where Dakota and I worked, Haven Landscaping, they reinforced their policies a lot. And I know they had them. I repeatedly did tell Dakota to wear
Testing on improper evidence, she never worked with Dakota at the Haven Landscaping Company.
Response?
Your Honor, as Ms. Weirs is Dakota's sister, she would have knowledge on Haven Landscaping and a few of its policies, especially in concern to how it affects Dakota.
Your Honor,
I think
that she had worked with Dakota when she never did.
I'm going to overrule the objection. The prosecution, or I'm sorry, defense can inquire into that statement if they believe that it's incorrect. I guess it would be redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Let's go back into that one question. Could you go into why you stated that happened to Dakota?
Yeah, so while she was working at Haven Landscaping, I know they reinforced these policies. And I always told Dakota to wear protective gear, but ultimately Dakota was 14 when she started working there, and Haven never reinforced the rules, and Dakota didn't have enough knowledge and foresight to protect themselves.
So how's your relationship with Dakota now?
Obviously, I love my twin sister, but I feel myself and Dakota only being 20 years old, she is in pain, and because of her condition, and I know she loves the piano, but I feel for her, but she is still young and looking for someone to blame for her mistakes.
Thank you for testifying today. Ms. Weirs, before you go, I do want to ask one final question. Why are you testifying today?
The spread of misinformation is something that sways in our lives a lot. So starting research and understanding Drufo is the only way you can really understand the truth about it. And Drufo is only going to be helpful to the people.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I have no further questions.
Thank you. People's Cross.
Yes, Your Honor, we do have a cross. Is it true that you stated you only believed and wrote about lucrative topics such as UFOs and things like that as a kid, correct?
As a kid, I am now 20 and I believe and write about different things.
You provided a statement before the trial, correct?
Correct.
Were you as honest and accurate as possible when you were giving your statement?
Of course.
I'd like to direct the court's attention to page 39, line 95 through 96. Ms. Weers, could you go to page 39, line 95 through 96 for me, please?
Yes, one moment, please.
I'm sorry, can you reference the page and the line numbers again?
Yeah, sorry. Page 39, line 95 and 96.
Line 5, you said?
Line 95 through 96.
My writing now generates income, but I'm a freelance and my articles have hardly been lucrative. Sadly, I have to work as a part-time server at Applebee's just to make ends meet.
Okay. Give us one moment. We're pulling up the exhibit or the statement. Give me 1 second.
Can you hear me? Objection, Your Honor, improper impeachment.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm not impeaching. I'm just clearly trying to state a specific statement she has said in her testimony, and I'm not trying to impeach.
So that is still a hearsay statement, right? It's Miss Skylar Weir's statement outside of court that's being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. The only way that you can bring it up is via impeachment. At this point, I'm going to find that it is not impeachment because she has never denied that statement. So the objection is sustained and the jury is instructed to disregard that, the reading of those lines.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And okay, let's move on. So you said that you had personally worked with Dakota Weirs, correct?
Could you repeat it?
When in your direct, you said that you had worked with Dakota Weirs, correct? At Haven Landscaping together?
I may have missaid that.
So you missaid the part where you cannot work at Haven Landscaping knowing your allergies to the products that are used in Haven Landscaping, correct?
I'm sorry, rephrase the question.
You knowingly missaid that you worked with Dakota Weirs knowing that you had a grass allergy that you cannot work with Haven Landscaping, correct?
Yes, that was my mistake. Dakota works there. I was close to her, so I felt as though we shared the same job. So I never directly worked with Haven Landscaping.
And you said in your direct that you told Dakota directly that she should wear precautionary measures such as wearing the protective gear, correct?
Of course, she's my sister. I would never want her to be harmed in any way to any chemical. I just wanted to warn her to make sure that she was going to be okay at the end of the day.
Even though you did not say that in your testimony, correct?
I'm sorry, you glitched.
Even though you did not say that in your testimony that you directly told her to wear protective gear, correct?
Correct.
That is all the questions I have today, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense redirect.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, why do you no longer write articles about conspiracy theories?
I have grown up. I was a child when I started writing conspiracy theories about aliens and that kind of stuff. But now that I'm older, I have a real job as a journalist at The Rationalist. I have grown up to more serious topics.
And Ms. Weirs, why are other fertilizers dangerous?
Because they use more nitrogen, and nitrogen is obviously bad for the body, causing things like cancer. So DRUFO limits that, and so it is ultimately the safest fertilizer out there.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Based on that redirect, does the plaintiff have any recross?
Yes, I have a couple questions. And I just want to clarify, you said in your testimony that you are a freelance writer, correct?
Correct.
And you said that it has hardly been lucrative, correct?
Yes.
Meaning, as a freelance writer, you still write about these topics, correct?
Correct. I obviously do my research and I publish accordingly.
That was all the questions I had today. Sorry, was I muted?
Did you were muted. Was there a question that you were asking?
No, I finished all my questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. This witness is excused. Defense, please call your next witness, your third.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'd like to call Devin Williams to the stand. Hello, Dr. Williams. Could you please introduce yourself to the court, spelling your last name for the record?
Good morning. I am Dr. Devin Williams. That is Williams.
And what do you do for a living, Dr. Williams?
I work at Lush for their toxicology research and development labs, and I am also the co-chair of the ethics committee.
Could you explain more about what you do for Lush?
Yes, of course. My job basically is making sure that all DRFO products are industry leading, environmentally aware, and cost effective. Not only does this benefit us, but it benefits our customers as well.
How long have you been doing this job?
Roughly a decade ago now, and I've led the toxicology labs for about 7.
Could you please tell the court what credentials you have to be qualified for this job?
Well, my education is from undergrad through PhD, which I earned at Colorado State University. And then from there, I went into a post-PhD in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
Could you explain to the court what that is?
Yes, basically it's kind of, if there's going to be a substance that is going to harm the human species, my job is, or toxicology is basically to figure out how to neutralize that situation if it is to happen.
Do you have any other professional experience in the field of toxicology?
I do. I have worked at Colorado State University, the Denver CU Anschwitz Medical Campus Graduate School, and Larimer County Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. All of these are in areas pertaining to toxicology.
Do you have any toxicology certifications?
Yes, I do. I received them from the states of Wyoming, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah.
Has any of your research been published?
Yes, many of my research has been published, but most notably would probably be the forensic aspects of poisons.
Your Honor, permission to move Dr. Williams as an expert witness in toxicology under Rule 702 based on her specialized education, training, and experience.
Plaintiff position?
No objection, Your Honor.
Without objection, Dr. Williams will be accepted as an expert in the field of toxicology and will be able to render opinions in that field. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Dr. Williams, I'd like to switch your attention to your knowledge on fertilizer and DRUFO specifically. What is the main focus for fertilizers?
Well, before the main focus on fertilizers was the nitrogen fixing chemical process, or better known as straight fertilizers. But as we moved more into this century, we wanted to focus on a macronutrient fertilizer that contained phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and zinc.
How has it changed since then, if at all?
Well, the issue of eutrophication emerged when we entered the century, which is basically the buildup of excess nutrients in bodies of water.
Now, would you be able to break down what that means for the court?
Yes, of course. Basically, what happens is the unused nitrates that comes off of the fertilizer mixes with the bacteria in the soil, and this runs into our water systems due to irrigation runoff. And because of this, it's toxic to fish. So we're seeing like a lot of nitrate pollution and a lot of marine populations being negatively affected by eutrophication.
Now, with your experience at Lush, what did you learn about DRUFO?
Well, what I learned is that basically DRUFO is a patented bonding agent, which basically means that the chemicals from DRUFO itself and the chemicals off of the plants or whatever you're using the fertilizer on basically combines. And what this means realistically is that there's less spray that needs to be used on our plants. And on top of that, it's less that our customers really need to purchase because they're not using as much fertilizer. And on top of that, again, it's using less is going to wash away into the soil, which is essentially eliminating eutrophication from the very beginning.
Now, is DRUFO used in other countries?
It is not. It is prohibited in other countries.
Do you know why they banned DRUFO?
Well, the EU chose to prohibit the use of DRUFO specifically because it doesn't do so under, it does not reduce nitrates under unrealistic laboratory conditions in other countries.
Dr. Williams, I now want to shift your attention to the study done by Casey Rogers. Are you aware of Dr. Rogers' study showing the dangers of DRUFO?
Yes, I am. However, I looked over and analyzed data from Lush, which I believe to be a lot more reliable.
What makes the studies you reviewed more reliable than Dr. Rogers?
Well, what I looked at was basically comparing apples to apples, not apples to oranges, which is what Dr. Rogers did. And through doing that, I discovered that all the data that we looked at was shown that DRUFO does not have an elevated risk of non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
What made you draw this conclusion?
Well, farm laborers and gardeners are exposed to a numerous amount of different chemicals and environmental conditions. When you really think about it, different lifestyles mean different environments, and different environments mean different exposures.
Based on this information, did you feel that Dr. Rogers' study was valid?
No, I do not believe his study is valid.
In your expert opinion, what would a valid study need to consist of?
Well, in what I believe that a valid study needs to look at farm laborers who use DRUFO to farm laborers who use fertilizer without DRUFO. Unlike what Dr. Rogers did, because he looked at exposure to DRUFO from farm laborers to casual gardeners versus people who don't do either of those things. And it's less likely that you're going to see a connection.
Now, what would this mean for Dr. Rogers' study?
Well, if what I said is true, the people that Dr. Rogers looked at would have a higher incidence of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma with reasons outside of the connection to DRUFO.
Did you notice anything else about Dr. Rogers' study?
Yes, I noticed that his study has not been duplicated and more importantly, has not been peer reviewed.
Do you have any final words on Rogers' study?
Yes, the history of science is filled with studies that can't be duplicated, but sometimes that's because it could be a fluke. Other times it could be because the person who is carrying out the study has bias. Now, all researchers do have bias most of the time when carrying out studies, but it seems that Dr. Rogers has a lot more financial bias when it comes to this case, as he's carving himself to be a
Objection, Your Honor. Improper character evidence. She's bringing financial bias into a question about whether his research is reliable.
Bonds?
Your Honor, this is just a generalized statement. It's not really targeting Dr. Rogers.
So the question did ask Dr. Williams' opinion of Dr. Rogers' study. She can certainly opine on what she thinks is the motivating factor and what she thinks of the research altogether. I'm going to overrule the objection.
Well, as I was saying, Dr. Rogers is carving himself as a niche expert witness in a case that he does not necessarily have solid proof about if non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and DRUFO are connected truly.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Plaintiff Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. So is it true that you oversee the production of DRUFO in your lab?
That is true, and I am also the co-chair of the ethics committee as well.
And it's also true that you believe in the peer review and replication process?
Yes, I think it is extremely important. I would say that you cannot you cannot have proper data if it has not been looked over by peers and it has not been duplicated, because as I've said, it could seriously just be a fluke.
And it's also true that the EU did not allow Drufo to be sold within its country.
Yes, but as I previously stated, that is due to the fact that reducing nitrates in nature are not done so under unrealistic laboratory conditions in other countries.
But it's also true that this could be considered an experiment, probably the same experiment you guys conducted on the amount of nitrates within the soil, correct?
I'm a bit confused by your question. Can you rephrase it, please?
My question is the EU also, so the EU denied the selling of Drufo, correct? And that's after they conducted a replica or an experiment on the replication of Drufo. And your answer was that Drufo is because of the natural soil, but due to that experiment being replicated in a lab with the things, does that also mean that your experiment was replicated? Correct?
Yes, it was replicated in other countries, which means that it's, again, I'm still a little bit confused on the clarification of this question, but it was replicated. And the reason that it was prohibited was.
I'm just asking, in a yes or no answer, did the EU replicate your experiment?
Yes.
And did they also deny the selling of Drufo within the EU?
Yes, but as I've stated multiple times now,
Objection,
that
that wasn't asked and answered.
Now, in your expert opinion, can
Well,
Drufo?
Mr. Thompson, one moment. So there's an
Yeah,
objection to asked and answered. What's your response?
My response is that she was giving vague answers that were not a yes or no response. So she was going on, even though I asked a yes or no question, or a leading question, to be fair.
So, but the objection was you asked the same question and got the same answer.
She was confused on what the I was clarifying the question and my response, because she actually asked, she was confused, so she asked me to repeat my question there, which is why I repeated the same question there.
Objection overruled.
In your expert opinion, can Drufo cause any adverse harm to humans?
any fertilizer can cause adverse effects to humans. That's why fertilizer has safety precautions, and that's not just with Drufo, it's with all fertilizers.
And Drufo still causes eutrophication, correct?
It reduces eutrophication, yes.
But it still causes eutrophication?
Well, I would say it's very hard to eliminate eutrophication completely, but I would say that it's one of like the only fertilizers that's even making an attempt to reduce nitrate pollution, yes.
Eutrophication leads to algae blooms, correct?
That is true.
And these algae blooms are also known to harbor bacteria harmful against marine life and human life, correct?
Yes, which is why Lush is working on trying to eliminate eutrophication from the very beginning.
That's it, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the defense have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, very briefly. Dr. Williams, in your own words, how would you describe your customers' success?
Well, I would define customer success by ensuring our customers' safety and ensuring that our customers know how to use our product safely. And on top of that, I would define customer success as them knowing that they are successfully able to use fertilizer from a company that values the environment and values the elimination of nitrate pollution.
Even though you were asked to postulate on broader outcomes, would you say this impacted your data collection and customer success?
No, not at all. That's purely the nature of science. When you really look at it, especially in an industry that supports agricultural food systems, the data that I found and that I studied was broad, but that does not make it any less important for the research that Lush is doing.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Based on that redirect, does the plaintiff have any recross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please.
Quite briefly. Would you say, is it true that you get financial income from being the head of the lab for toxicology?
Objection, Your Honor. I did not cover that in my redirect, so I do not believe that he can cross on that information.
So the objection is to scope response?
Your Honor, she talked about the goals for her customers. And in order to talk about goals, you have to have finance because you work for those goals. So talking about her financial bias and her goals for her customers is actually the foundation of my redirect.
Objection overruled. Dr. Williams, if you need the question asked again, please ask.
May you ask the question again?
As lead head lab of the toxicology department, you would make money from Drufo being a successful product, correct?
I would, but money is not my motivation for working with Lush or working on Durafo.
And is it also true that you would make more money if it was sold within the EU?
That is true, but it's not sold within the EU, and I'm not primarily concerned with whether it's not sold in the EU or not.
Is it also true that you are trying, Blake Doncourt is actually attempting to get it approved through the EU, correct?
That is true.
Thank you. That's all, Your Honor.
Thank you. This witness is excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Does the defense have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Thank you. Plaintiff, are you prepared to present your closing argument?
I am, Your Honor.
Please.
Ladies and gentlemen of the court, as the trial comes to a close, I remind you that a young, talented, and beautiful girl's dreams have been ripped away from her, and her quality of life will never be what it once was. Her dreams of going to Juilliard and being a top pianist have been shattered due to the negligence of Lush fertilizer. Her future was promising. Now, her future is dark. As non-Hodgkin lymphoma opens the door for new illnesses down the road, she won't be able to go to her dream school, and she's forced to live in the pain of the symptoms lymphoma brings her. In this case, we have shown by a preponderance of evidence that our client, Dakota Wares, has developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma from Lush Fertilizer's chemical Drofo. Furthermore, Lush ignored scientific data that Drofo was carcinogenic and then avoided pricey safety measures that would ensure the fertilizer would be safe, such as baking. It has been established through our trial that Lush Fertilizer did manufacture their fertilizer product with the chemical compound known as Drofo. They further proved negligent by not exercising reasonable care to prevent the product from creating unreasonable risk to users, including Dakota, who used this product for 3 to 4 years as a teen. Their fertilizer is a consumer product available for use by minors. With this comes a responsibility to ensure product safety beyond a warning understating Drofo's risks. Dakota's non-Hodgkin lymphoma was a direct result of Lush's failure to ensure Drofo's safety. Our case has shown the consequences to Dakota's life and future through her testimony, how her life has been turned upside down. She was a minor working with a hazardous chemical and had no idea how dangerous it was and what the consequences of her not wearing protective gear was, as the label only warned against eye irritation. Lush Fertilizer owed the public more safety measures on a product that had a probability of being cancerous than a small warning label that didn't fully explain the severity of Drofo's effects. They also owed the public full certainty that Drofo wasn't cancerous, which they didn't do as they ignored scientific results and avoided safety measures like baking. Carson Durst then goes on to prove that Lush Fertilizer puts money over safety. His concerns were ignored again and again, and as Lush turned into a toxic work environment, he was forced to switch companies. Carson's job was to determine if Drofo was safe, and when he said it could be carcinogenic, his results were undermined, and Lush Fertilizer was still released to the markets. It was clear that this was for monetary reasons, as reports show that they didn't bake it to gain profit and pay back their, quote, vulture capitalists. Dr. Roger proved that there was evidence it was carcinogenic in humans. Although his study was inconclusive because of the uncertainty of protective gear, this doesn't quite affect the study in Dakota's case, as she didn't wear protective gear either. He says this as an expert and someone who has extensive knowledge over Drofo, that there's a high degree of medical probability that Dakota's lymphoma was caused by Drofo. The defense brought witnesses, including Blake, who was proven to have personal motives to put money over safety and ignored scientific evidence that Drofo was carcinogenic. She even admitted to the court that she had a concern that Drofo was carcinogenic and still released it to the market, even though she said under oath that there was a suspicion she would never have released it. If the CEO believes it could be cancerous, then why was it released? Going one step further, why did the label not include these concerns? A warning for eye irritation is not the same as warning that it is a cancerous product. Skylar Wares is a biased witness, as she has an unhealthy relationship with her twin. She even lied in her witness statement, saying that she worked at Haven Landscaping with Dakota and brought up things that weren't said in her witness statement, like she told Dakota to wear protective gear. Why should we believe her expert testimony if she lied about such small things? She even forgot her own allergies. Her previous work in scientific journalism is writing about UFOs and flat earth theories. Overall, she's an unreliable expert witness. Devin Williams came for Dr. Rogers' character when she suggested that he was doing this trial for monetary compensation. However, Dr. Williams is doing this trial for his employee and is thus getting paid for his involvement as well. The EU even replicated Dr. Williams' experiment and still didn't find Drofo safe. Consequently, Drofo is still illegal in the EU, but they thought it was okay for them to still sell it in the American markets. As a civil case, the plaintiff Dakota Wares must prove her case by preponderance of evidence, meaning it is more probably true than not. Dakota fell victim to an unfortunate case of a corporation putting money before safety, and her life will forever be altered because of that. Lush failed to exercise reasonable care to protect users of Lush fertilizer, and for these reasons and the evidence in our case so clearly proves, we ask for monetary compensation for Dakota's severe emotional and physical distress due to this disease. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does the defense have a closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please.
May it please the court? Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, my name is Carolines and my co-counsel and I represent Lush Fertilizer. You have heard many witnesses testify, but one theme should have been shown again and again throughout the case, which is that Lush Fertilizer took the correct precautions to ensure the safety of their customers and did not willfully ignore the studies that revealed its dangers. Beginning with Blake Doncourt, you heard that as CEO of Lush, it wasn't all about the money. She cared for her customers, her workers, and the environment. Ms. Doncourt has received many awards for humanitarian work, charity work, and other work with environmental causes. Ms. Doncourt wanted to use Drufo because this improvement to the fertilizer would improve the environment. She also followed the guidelines step by step to ensure the fertilizer was safe for her customers. She did in fact put a label on the packaging and provided the risks that went along with using the fertilizer. Moving on to Skylar Weirs, who was committed to researching Drufo, finding that Drufo is ultimately a better choice than other fertilizers. Because of its bonding agents, it will only need to be used 1 to 2 times much less than other fertilizer. This will lead to less nitrogen use, meaning a smaller environmental impact, and especially leading to minimal health risks like cancer. Finishing out the defense side is Dr. Devin Williams, an expert in toxicology, an expert who has reviewed countless research on fertilizer, Drufo, and how things affect the plants, animals, and people. Unlike Dr. Casey Rogers, Williams actually compared like people and limited the amount of outside variables that could have affected the outcomes. Then we move on to the plaintiff, Dakota Wares. It was unfortunate that she got non-Hodgkin lymphoma, but Lush is not responsible for this. Weirs was given the guidelines to make sure she was safe with the fertilizer and able to keep using it, but unfortunately she took those guidelines with a grain of salt. She deliberately did not wear the gloves, long sleeve shirts, and pants when utilizing the fertilizer, which could have increased the chance of developing cancer. She claimed it was too hot to wear them. She claims that if she had known the effects, then she would have acted differently. But why would she not take the proper precautions that not only Lush set in place, but also her boss in the first place? Weirs also used a variety of fertilizers, so who's to say one of those didn't cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma to develop? She also claims to not be able to go to her dream school, but as you saw in our cross-examination, that she still in fact has that scholarship and there is a possibility of attending, as her doctor was hopeful in her conditions and their improvements. Moving on to Carson Durst, who got lucky with landing the job at Lush in the first place, claims he knows about Drufo and seeing reports that Drufo was harmful. The copy of the study reports he received on his desk had non-Hodgkin lymphoma nowhere on it. Not only that, but after he left Lush Fertilizer and having signed a non-compete and a non-disclosure when he first started out at Lush, he knowingly went to the competitor of Lush Terra Greenery to work for them, just to spite and get back at Mr. Doncourt because he felt betrayed. He then pleaded ignorance when those documents were resurfaced and prevented him from working for Terra's Greenery. Do we really expect to believe that Mr. Durst could simply forget an important document coincidentally at the time he wanted to leave Lush? Lastly, Dr. Rogers. His study was carried out very poorly. He didn't compare like people in similar environments like Dr. Williams did, which left all sorts of room for error and false conclusions. Going further, his experiment wasn't even replicated. Like all experiments, scientists replicate them over and over again to see if the results are consistent and if their hypothesis is true or not. They do this to make sure that their initial results were not purely just a fluke. The plaintiff would like you to believe that Lush was the cause of her misfortune and fails to take any blame for her part, like not taking the proper precautions. Lush did their part. They labeled their fertilizers with warning, which Dakota Weirs was aware of or should have been aware of and deliberately ignored them. From what was heard today, there isn't even concrete proof that Drufo in the fertilizer is the cause of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Without that proof, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, your decision is quite simple. Lush Fertilizer did not willfully ignore studies that revealed the danger, and it is not their fault. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the plaintiff have any rebuttal?
I do, Your Honor.
Please.
I would like to address the fact that you said that if Dakota said in her testimony that if she did know the precautions that she could have gotten cancer, that she would have worn protective gear. However, that just proves my point. The understated safety warning did lead to her not wearing the protective gear. And if it was a proper safety label with the cancer effects included on it, Dakota wouldn't have her disease as she would have worn the proper gear. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Congratulations, everybody. Round 3 is now in the bag. Now you've got one more to go. So I want to give a few minutes to our scoring panelists to get their scores submitted and make sure everything is working. Just want to give a couple of observations. I think the cross-examination in this trial was amazing. Probably one of the best trials by both sides that I've seen in a long time. Been doing this, unfortunately, a lot of years. Ms. Shaw, your cross on Ms. Doncourt, that, quite frankly, that felt like it made the case. I mean, that was one of the most amazing crosses I've seen.
Your Honor.
I have a comment. Whoever did the direct of Dr. Rogers, you qualified Dr. Rogers as an expert in agriculture and entomology, which is basically plants and insects. Great. Then started asking questions about, cancer and things like that. Miss Lyons was absolutely correct when she objected and said this is outside the scope of their expertise. Next time, qualify Dr. Rogers as an expert in toxicology, right? Toxicology is the effect of toxins on the human body. Now you can go in and talk about, lymphoma and cancer and how bad Drufo is for the human body, but she was absolutely right. It was overruled just because we didn't want to derail your entire presentation, but understand that was an absolutely appropriate objection and probably would have been sustained. Again, great job by everybody. Very, very impressed. Jim, it looks like I can see you sitting there looking. You got your scores in?
I do.
Perfect. If you want to take a few minutes.
Sure, I would sure echo what His Honor has just said, and congratulations to all of you. I always like to add my congratulations to parents and coaches and teachers. This doesn't happen kind of in the moment, but I really, first of all, I compliment you for doing this on Zoom. It's those of us who have spent a career in courtrooms face to face with people, and they're now kind of, one of us anyway, living his life on Zoom, mediating and arbitrating. Appreciate that it's hard to get the connection you need. Particularly in opening and closing arguments, I think, when you're talking to this this jury, if you will, that's kind of out there in the ether. And I thought you did well with that. I had the sense, and I'm not sure who was or who wasn't on both the closing and the openings that you were reading. And again, that's very easy to do and kind of lapse into on Zoom. But you have to, if you're going to do that, you have to pay attention to the pacing and the inflection. And I thought both closing arguments, by the way, were very good in that regard. I like the connection too, in particular among, I guess it was Ms. Shaw doing the direct examination of Casey Rogers, Mr. Schuler's playing the part, and then also Ms. Yokuba. I'm going to apologize. Pronounce it for it's the accent that I was having trouble with. Which syllable to accent?
It's Yakubovich.
Yakubovich. That's exactly the way I had it phonetically. I thought the interaction among the three of you, the two attorneys with the witness, was very good. I got the sense that the witness was playing his part in this case very well, and that you were listening to the answers and responding to the answers. And that's a trick in a real courtroom too. The judge and I have both seen cases where, you know, the lawyers are so tied to their notes and so intent on asking a question, they don't even hear the answer to the question. And I thought you all handled that very well. Ms. Williamson playing Skylar Weirs, I thought was excellent, by the way, and a good interplay among both counsel on direct and cross-examination. But that's a great job. And again, I think it's an even tougher job on Zoom, and you all handled that very, very well. Thank you.
Ms. Barnes, you popped in at the perfect moment. Your score's in?
Yes, they are, Your Honor.
Perfect. You want to give them some feedback?
Just a few comments. First of all, I mirror a lot of the comments already made, but I thought everyone did an excellent job. Everyone was professional. I do feel like maybe there was some reading, but also feel like it was speaking, there was some fast talking, which made it a little difficult to understand at times, but we are on Zoom and that is difficult. And again, commend you for tackling that challenge and doing it well. I really liked the closing by the plaintiff. I'm sorry, I don't know your name, Rachel. I thought you did an excellent job in summarizing the evidence. And I applaud you for your style. There was some character to it, and that's appreciated. So great job to everyone. And I look forward to the next round.
Ms. Saltzman, are you with us?
I am, Your Honor. I'm almost done scoring.
Okay, no worries. Take your time.
Judge, I wanted to make sure you got my message. My IM.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, one quick thing for defense, when you call Dr. Williams, get his resume in, or his CV, especially since the prosecution's expert got theirs in. You don't want the jury going back with just the prosecution's expert CV. You want your CV back there as well. So move it in.
Your Honor, my scores are in.
Perfect. If you want to give them some feedback.
Sure. I want to congratulate all of you. What you're doing is not easy. I remember my first jury trial and I was terrified. So I would have never been able to do this in high school. Congratulations to everybody. It was really hard, as Judge Miller said, to connect because through Zoom, it's hard. I think when you have a jury, eye contact is really important. And it appeared to me, and I could very well be wrong, but it appeared to me that you were either looking at a different monitor, looking at papers. I could see the eyes shifting, so you weren't looking at the camera directly at the jury. And that could very well just be part of this setup with Zoom. And if we were in person, there would have been more of that eye contact. I know that time was a real stressor and very important. You didn't have a whole lot of time. You spoke very quickly for good reason. Some of the follow-up questions I think were missed, and as opposed to just reading from a script of questions. And I think that's probably attributable to time. Some of the reality is that nowadays we do have time trials in the court. So, for example, the other day I did a trial, I had 85 minutes to present 7 witnesses. Yeah, And I did it in 32 minutes to spare. So it just takes a lot of planning, but I know that that timing is a big stressor. You guys did great getting all the information in. I admire that. I have trouble doing that, as you guys have. And I think what I missed also was some of the emotion. The emotion on behalf of the plaintiff. She has a very sad story to tell. And then on behalf of the defense, possibly a strong story to tell because she's going after the deep pocket. So having a theme and displaying a lot of that emotion for a jury is I believe, important. Again, I wish we were in person because I think that there would have been more emotion and more connection. But you guys did a remarkable job with the platform you had and with all of the information you were given in this case. Congratulations.
Thank you, Ms. Saltzman. If we can hang out for just a minute, I think we are waiting on Ms. Green to give us the all clear, our courtroom monitor.
Your Honor, I believe we are good. If there's any
Great.
problems with the scores, we can get a hold of them directly.
Perfect. Thanks, everybody, and good luck in the next round.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.